Hi, hello everyone, and welcome back to our look through Dr. Dave Regis's ebook on chess tactics, learning about chess tactics. And I hope that Dr. Dave will forgive me. I'm going to skip around here a little bit, just in the interest of keeping the videos of an equal length, because the next three chapters, we've got 3 games on counterattacking, 3 games on traps in 2 chapters' time, and then 5 games entitled From Bad to Worse in the middle. So what I'm going to do is do the 3 on counterattacking and then the 3 on traps in this video, and then go back to do the From Bad to Worse games, just to keep the videos a nice even length. So let's start with counterattacking, and our first game, Denmark 1966, and we have Christensen against Anderson. So let's see where we go in this. E4. Oh, turn the lines off, we don't need those. E5. Knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, knight to f6, and knight to g5. Are we going to get the fried liver attack here? Let's have a look. For new viewers, I don't usually look at the games before I actually do the videos. So I'm doing this sort of sight unseen. And the only thing I do is count how many games are coming so I can make the videos the right length. And yes, I think we might be going into the infamous fried liver attack. Pawn takes d5. Probably black's best move here is to play knight here, and after bishop check and c6, it's still it's a god-awful mess. There's no way of putting it. But if black plays knight takes d5, things get really, really messy, because we can now go into the fried liver attack, and that is this move. Knight takes f7. Now, a computer will tell you this is in favor of white with best play, but boy, can it get a bit messy. First thing to say, this knight has forked the queen and the rook. So black's got to do something about it. And the only logical thing you can do really is king takes. So black is now a straight knight up. Knight for a pawn, actually, if you must. But a knight for a pawn, but with the king in the open, unable to castle, and already with a white bishop pointing at it. And white's next move, queen to f3, check, and a second piece attacking the knight. So the king has to go really to e6, otherwise the piece just gets given back. It's worth pointing out, by the way, that this is just a hilariously bad move, because you can end up getting checkmated with a bishop. So after king there, queen here, the only move to stop the mate is queen takes. Bishop takes queen is still check. The only way to block it's with the bishop, and then you've actually got checkmate with just a bishop, which is kind of funny. But anyway, that doesn't happen in the game because black plays king e6. So now there's 2 pieces defending the knight, but 2 attacking. So you can see where the pressure is going to be. Now, we know that when you have a pinned piece, the next thing you should do is attack it again. So knight to c3 from white. And the computer will tell you this is just over +1. So definitely advantage white, but not yet enough that you need to resign the game. It's still complicated. Fine. But black's next move isn't the best, and what black plays, it's very tempting, is knight to d4. And this looks tempting because you're sort of hitting the queen and you're threatening this square here. But actually, it just doesn't really work. And I'll put the lines back on just to sort of demonstrate why here. Because white can just sort of simplify everything and you just lose. Bishop takes d5. So this is check. You can't obviously play queen takes because queen takes and the knight's protecting. So, oops, the knight's protecting, so that's no good. So you'd have to put the king somewhere. And you have to be a little careful here, because if you go to king e7, you actually get mated in 2. This is why the fried liver's so dangerous. Queen to f7, king must go here. And then knight e4 is a rather amusing checkmate. And the bishop and the queen protect each other. So you can't be doing that. And yeah, what you'd actually have to do in this position is play presumably king to d6. And it's just horrible. It's just horrible. You can't have your king wandering around the middle of the board like this. Even though the computer's only saying sort of +2, give or take, you can't have a king wandering around the middle of the board. It's just too dangerous. Okay, so that's really an example of why we don't probably want to play the fried liver attack as black. It's not that it's not dangerous, don't get me wrong. Black does win with it occasionally, but it's, yeah, with best play, it favours white. Right, our second game in the counter-attacking chapter. This must be an inter-county game in England, because it says Somerset against Devon, and I suppose they could be surnames, but it seems a bit unlikely. And it's an under-14s game in 2004, so let's see how this goes. It looks like black wins, so this one, so we'll put the board the other way around. Okay, e4. Oh, don't need the lines at the minute, turn them off. e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, knight to c3, knight to f6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5. Well, this is all perfectly sensible, normal development so far. And then white goes knight to g5. Okay, so obviously the knight and the bishop aiming at this slightly tender f7 square. Castles by black, castles by white. Okay, d6 from black and knight to d5 from white. This is all very ordinary looking chess so far, nothing much to report. Computer thinks actually this is slightly better for black, but nothing that really matters at junior level. Well, there you go, pretty much level at minus nothing. Right, so after bishop e6, we get a load of exchanges. So knight takes, queen takes, bishop takes on e6, pawn takes. Now this is interesting because this is opening up the queen to this with the support of the rook and the bishop cross-firing. So this f2 square suddenly looks a little bit tender, to say the least. And, oh, white plays queen to h5. So white goes straight for the checkmate here, no messing about. But it's not the best move. As you can see, the computer now says black is -1 and a bit, so a bit better for black. And the reason, quite simply, is that there's too many pieces on this square. So black has time to simply play bishop takes pawn check and can ignore this threat because it's check. Let's just see. Excuse me, sorry, swallowed my breath there. Let's just see what happens if rook takes bishop. Queen takes, you can't take with the king because the rook is defending. So king to the corner and you get checkmated. And if we go back a few moves in this position, if you just play king to h1, well, now the easy way to stop this threat here is just to kick the knight away. And black's okay here. You have to be a little careful because the bishop is pinned. Admittedly, the bishop is pinned. But nothing dramatic to worry about. I wonder what the computer says happens if you play knight to h3 and attack the bishop. I'm just curious. It's not good because, look, it still says -2. What's the next move for white in this position? I've just got myself curious now as to how to deal with this. What would you play? Queen h4. Oh, yes, okay, fair enough. Yeah, yeah. So you've got this defense of the bishop from the queen, which makes pretty good sense. Yeah, okay, fine. And yeah, that breaks the pin. So, okay, well, that was quite a placid game. Nothing too violent and horrible in that one. Some of the games in these miniature games from Dr. Dave are quite brutal chess, aren't they? But not so much with that one. This one probably will be because I've just seen what the opening's going to be. This one's an elephant gambit, which, yeah, just yuck. So let's have a look. e4, e5, knight f3, and d5 from black. So first thing to say, the elephant gambit with correct play, it's actually not completely unplayable for black, but it is better for white. And the computer slowly but surely is making its way up to +1, and white shouldn't be +1 after 2 moves. So a slight mistake, but it is complicated, and you can get yourself into a mess as white. So let's see how this game goes. We have no player names, by the way, for this one. So knight takes e5, d takes e4, bishop to c4, so going straight for this tender square as usual. Queen to g5, this looks a bit like the line in the Latvian gambit from the previous video, doesn't it? Let's see where this takes us. Bishop takes f7 check, and king to e7, okay. d4 from white, so that move opens up the bishop onto the queen. Queen takes pawn, queen takes g2, so attacking the rook. See, one thing about the elephant gambit and the Latvian gambit is the position can never be accused of being boring. Rook to f1, bishop to h3, so we're actually threatening all kinds of things now as black here. Bishop to c4 from white is an interesting move, just defends backwards. New players often forget that bishops can move backwards, so this is defending the rook in the corner. Knight to f6 from black, and this is slightly better for white at the moment, as you'd expect from the elephant gambit. Played properly, white should do better. But white then makes a mistake. Knight to f7. And suddenly the bar whizzes back the other way, and now it's sort of -2-ish to black. The threat is, of course, knight takes rook. Excuse me. But the problem is that white has overloaded their own piece. And remember, an overload is where a piece is doing too many things. So this bishop is currently protecting the knight, and we can distract it and overload it. What on earth do you mean? Well, b5 is a good move here. And now what's the bishop going to do? What's it going to do? It's a problem, isn't it? Let's put the computer on, see what it says is best here. The first thing, if we play bishop to b3, you can't do that because you've unprotected the rook. Okay, so we can't just retreat the bishop. What else are we going to do? If we play, goodness me, there's not much you can play here. If you play knight takes rook, well, you lose here. This knight is very unlikely to ever escape. You've suddenly got this problem again, so you're going to have to defend probably knight d2, and this is just awkward for white. You know what I mean? The bishop's blocked. This is scary. This is going to get dropped at some point. Yeah, not very nice. I don't think there's a great deal else, excuse me, that you can do in this position, really. Can you play knight d2? Oh, you can. It's top of the list, second on the list. Knight d2 straight away. So protect the rook. But after pawn takes, knight takes, we're not really much different to what we had before. This knight's going to get trapped. Black might play g6 and put the bishop here, for example. And yeah, this is just really unpleasant. Yeah. So bit of a trap there, a bit of a complicated opening, as Dr. Dave calls it. But some nice examples of getting the advantage from counter-attacking. Now, I'm going to skip a couple of pages here, as I say, and skip the 5 games of From Bad to Worse and go to the short chapter entitled Traps. And so, once again, our first game is actually black getting the upper hand, so we'll turn the board the other way up. And the first game, Dr. Dave has called a fork trap. And we're in what's called the Evans Gambit. So the Evans Gambit, e4, turn those off till we need it. e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5, and b4 is the Evans Gambit. And briefly, the idea is to distract the bishop away, attack it with c3, and then play d4. That's basically the idea. So it's sacrifice a pawn to get the black bishop distracted. How does it go in this game? Right, the knight takes b4 variation, okay. Little unusual, but fine. Knight takes e5 and queen to f6. So this seems to be forking 2 things. And yeah, I mean, it is forking 2 things. It's forking a checkmate on f2 and this knight here. How's black going to get out of this? Well, what about this move d4? Sorry, how's white going to get out of it? Well, d4 looks kind of clever, doesn't it? It looks like it protects the knight and attacks the bishop. But there is a bit of a problem with this, which is why it's -3. So for the first time in this video, press pause if you wish and see if you can work out the next move for black that's rather jolly here, that's rather a good move. Otherwise, I'll carry on in 3, 2, and 1. And we can actually take this. We can simply play bishop takes pawn. Why? Well, if queen takes, we walk into a fork. Knight checks, and then the queen will be lost next move. If you don't take this, now we've got a problem because we're still threatening checkmate, and the bishop is now threatening to take the rook. And there's really no way for black to do, for white to get out of this without just being material down, perhaps a piece down or an exchange, a rook for a bishop down. So a nice little trap there. Good. Okay, we need another board, 2 games to go. And this one, no player names again, but it's called Mortimer's Trap. It's quite well known, but let's have a look at how it goes. So e4 and e5, knight to f3 and knight to c6, bishop to b5, knight to f6, d3, very quiet way to defend this pawn, but perfectly okay. And now knight to e7 from black, which isn't a particularly good move, Really, you've just blocked your own bishop in, so you're going to have to move the knight again at some point to get the bishop out. Okay, but there is a bit of a trap behind it. This knight was defending the pawn. Now it isn't. And white in this game falls straight for the trap. Let's take the pawn. And now suddenly it's -1 and a bit, and you can see the computer thinks black's doing better. Well, why is that? Let's see. The next move is c6. So we're threatening the bishop. Okay, well, let's move the bishop away. Bishop to a4. What's the move here for black that wins a piece? Press pause if you want to find it. Otherwise, I'll show you in 3, 2, and 1. And queen to a5 is not only attacking the undefended bishop and the undefended knight, but it's check. So, of course, white has to do something to get out of check, and then black just takes a piece. So maybe bishop there isn't the best move. Let's see what the best move is for white. Well, the best move is to set a trap in return, knight here. Well, why is that the best move? Well, if pawn takes bishop, knight to d6 is actually checkmate because the king is completely smothered by his own pieces. Look at that. So white sets a trap in reverse. But fortunately, black, if they know what they're doing, won't fall for that. Black will play knight to g6. And now this pawn is still threatening the bishop. And if the bishop moves back, it's no longer this move, queen a5, because the knight defends that square, but instead is b5. And this simply wins a piece. So a whole series of tricks there, but ending with a winning pawn fork, well, a very good pawn fork that will make you a piece up. What a lovely little series of traps that was. Nice game. Okay, and a new board, and then one more game for this video. And this one, Dr. Dave actually says something before we have the game. In fact, we've got players here. It's Foyer against O'Kelly from Liège in Belgium, 1934. So it's a tournament game. And Dr. Dave puts, a remarkable trap to catch black's rook. Is it a fork or is it a jump? Okay, let's have a look. I've just seen what the last move in this game is. Actually, this is going to be a bit special, I think. Let's have a look. e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5 and a6, bishop to a4, d6, bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6. So a kind of weird version of the Roy Lopez here, but it's okay. d4 and f6. I normally hate this move in the opening for black, but because there's no white square bishop to jump on this diagonal, I guess it's probably not quite so bad this time. But on we go. Knight to c3, rook to b8. Rooks belong on open files, so fair enough. Queen to d3, knight to e7. Yeah, black might have a problem developing this bishop. But where else could the knight go? You don't put the knight here because bishop takes knight and pawn takes, and the pawns would just be horrible. So, okay, knight to e7, bishop to e3. So that offers a sacrifice of a pawn, doesn't it? Because rook takes is possible, but black can't be wasting time going off pawn grabbing when white is almost completely developed and black has still got pieces at home and a king stuck in the middle of the board. So move 9. Oh, well, told you I didn't read this live. Black does decide to go pawn grabbing and plays rook takes b2. Well, at least you're now going to see why we don't do that. It's too risky. Position's still level at the minute, but you'll see why you can't really go pawn grabbing in this sort of position in a sec. I love that. If you ever needed proof that I do this live, there it is. Pawn takes, hello, knight takes. So a sacrifice of a piece. From white, pawn takes and queen takes d8. Oh, okay. Yeah, now I understand why white's final move in this game is kind of pretty. King takes d8. And now if you want to find the winning move here for white, or the move that gets white the advantage, a big advantage, hit pause and see if you can work it out. Otherwise, I will press, I'll press on in 3, 2, and 1. Well, if you spotted castles, very well done. And this achieves two things. The first thing is the rook lands on d1, which is check. So black is now in check and will have to deal with it. But the king also lands on c1 and will just take the rook next move. So let's say black just gets out of check, king takes rook, And as you can see, computer's saying +2.5, give or take, advantage for white. White here is what is known as being the exchanger. White's got a rook against a bishop. Everything else matches up quite nicely, but rook against a bishop, and actually the black pawn formation is a complete disaster as well as the king being stuck in the middle. So a nice little trap, a nice little trick to finish this video. All right, hope that was quite interesting, especially the bit there where I said black probably shouldn't do this and then black promptly did it. I like that. That's quite funny. Thanks for watching. See you next time for some more chess. Cheers.